Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, Beacon Patrol, and Sexy Battle Wizards. This is Staying In.
It's just the tuna bus tonight.
It's just the tuna bus.
Now, not to besmirch our fellow podcasters and brackets and friends, but I quite enjoy it when it's the tuna bus because we get to do real talk. So
Real talk.
we get to do real talk, and it feels a little bit more like one of those like late night, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're listening to the Quiet Hour with your hosts Peter and Sam.
Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down a few levels.
Let's get chill for a second. Let's get real and chill.
And tonight's topic is
what are we going to be talking about?
Cushions.
Sam? Cushions.
And how many is too many?
And we have Deirdre on line 3 who says that she believes that there's a globalist conspiracy of lizard people looking to determine how many cushions we have. Well, thanks very much, Deirdre. And yes, we'll also do your shout out to your fellow co-workers on the night shift at Tesco. Coming up next, Paul has an idea about how many cushions can be fit into his Citroen 2CV, and that's after Rush. So that's good.
Well, why don't we? I think the best thing to do is to have a bit of a grab bag style episode.
Pick and mix.
where we just throw. Usually we're a bit precise. We're a bit thoughtful, considered about what we might be chatting about. But if it's just the two of us, let's just throw any old rubbish.
Exactly. Let's respond to that criticism that we are too professional. Let's just respond to that. All right, I'm going to say 3 words then.
Okay.
Sexy Battle Wizards.
All right.
Oh, well,
let's
get started. So this is you ran this. This is
I did. Yeah,
Grant Howitt.
That's correct. Yeah,
who is famous for a various number of things. Probably most famous, I think, for Honey Heist.
Yeah, probably
which is a wonderful one-page RPG about being a bear and trying to get through a heist in which you steal some honey. And it's an amazing game. I think we've talked about it on the podcast before. But the whole concept of a one-page RPG, if you've not played one of these before, and you should if you get a chance, because these are wonderful, is it's usually a very rules light, because you only have one page. Literally, it's all the rules are on one page. Usually, all the adventure is on one page as well. The entire setup and the situation is on one page. Usually, is done as a one shot because probably can't. A one pager might not be able to sustain a lengthy 3-year campaign. And they're usually very experimental. Usually the mechanics take a bit of a back seat, and they're very gonzo. They're very and they're very zine-like. So often they are tackling things and subjects that are a little bit off kilter, a little bit gonzo, or are just slightly weird in some way. And that's kind of the beauty of them. They only, you can run them for a few hours. You probably wouldn't want to play a campaign as a bear for months and months and months on end, but you certainly want to have a lovely fun evening of it. And Sexy Battle Wizards you ran it. And so why did you choose for our gaming group Sexy Battle Wizards? What was it about?
Well, what was it about those 3 specific terms and you and everyone? I did do Honey Heist a few years ago with our little RPG group. and that went very, very well.
It did.
Very much enjoyed it. And then due to a known scheduling issue, a gap presented itself within our long-running Blades of the Dark campaign.
Yep.
So I thought I would just if you just type in Grant Howitt, especially on itch.io, you can pretty much find the whole of Grant Howitt's sort of, what's it called, bibliography. Is that all right?
Yeah, bibliography, gamography,
and boy, like, he has done. I just thought that naively, I just thought that Honey Heist was a sort of flash in the pan, a seasoned RPG writer just doing something incredible on a weekend. But no, this is Grant Howitt's bag. This is like his thing. Like, he's filled multiple volumes with one-page RPGs. So when I knew that I kind of wanted to go down that hole of doing like a one-shot RPG, because I've got a couple of RPGs sitting around in some cupboard somewhere that I backed on Kickstarter and I'm still not done anything with, mostly because Chris is really dragging out this bloody one that we're doing. So I'm sure you feel the same, because you've got tons of RPG stuff going.
Yeah, I've got tons of stuff in my back pocket. I'm just like, oh, God, yeah, come on, let's go.
I keep trying to die, kill everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not working out.
Anyway. So I thought the one-pager for just like a one-shot is the best way to go. And you can pay what you want on itch.io for Grant Howitt stuff, which is really, really good, and it's extremely accessible.
Yeah.
But I dropped a couple of quid, a couple of bucks.
Because you're good like that, aren't you?
So good like that. And it was, sexy battle wizards was all that sold me on the game, and I just knew that I had to. And I think part of the reason why is that it's so different, even in title terms, to what we've been doing, which is Blades in the Dark, which, even though it has its moments of levity, is as dark and deadly and confrontational as the name suggests. So Sexy Battle Wizard seems to be like, a real opportunity for us all just to let our hair down a little bit and do something different.
For sure.
So how the game actually works is that you've got 3 stats. You got sexy, you got battle, and you got wizards. And you create your character, and you do that just by rolling a certain number of dice, and each dice is attributed. Each dice result has a certain physical trait or school of magic trait associated to it. So you roll a 6 and you've got well-toned abs. That's what makes you sexy.
Yeah.
Then you roll another dice and it says you come from the school of shielding chaos or something like that. And you'll roll another dice and it says, your weapon is a rage hammer or something like that. And that's what you get in terms of your character creation. And then you attribute 1 dice to either Sexy Battle Wizards, and then 2 dice to another one of those 3 stats, and then 3 dice to another one of the Sexy Battle or Wizard, and that's it. You've created your character.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what I was doing, I as the GM, again, just rolled dice that said, right, this is your campaign will be happening here. This is what the characters have to overcome, and this is what is at the final part of the campaign. So it kind of give me the bare bones of it, and everything else was just down to what me and the rest of you created. And there's just something exceptionally evocative about all of Grant Howitt's games, whether it's Honey Heist or Sexy Battle Wizards, where there's just enough to go off to really let your imagination unfurl. And the idea that we were playing around in this world where being sexy was a commodity, and was an ability that could be used, and if you wanted to do something, it wasn't like, all right, I want you to roll strength or dexterity. It was, right, can you roll sexy to do that, please? Because you were trying to either do something sexy in terms of like distracting someone in a battle or trying to win over someone's attention or whatever. And like how the rules are written is just like there's a particular part of the rules of the GM where it's just like, ask yourself this when creating NPCs. Are they kissable?
Yeah.
And that was like
important.
The base note that you get given. And I probably spent too long writing out a sort of, but I just like I kind of wanted to go in a little bit prepared and wanted to give the story a bit of structure, because I wanted it very specifically to rattle along. I didn't want it to get drawn out. I wanted it to kind of be done within like an hour and a half. So I probably did do a bit of overwriting, but I had an absolute ton of fun. And I think what I enjoyed most was seeing all of you guys just like really letting loose and doing stuff that's totally against the characters that I see you all play as like week in, week out.
Oh yeah, like for me, like that's the beauty of the one shot, right? And that's the beauty of a one-page RPG. For me, this is sorbet, right? Like this is like moving on to the next experience. This is you want a bit of a refresher, a bit of a palate cleanser before you move on to the next big thing, or before you go back to that big thing that you already are doing. And for example, Chris is running this incredible Blades in the Dark campaign that's been going on for years now, and it is epic. Like, he's epic in that.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's been amazing so far. But the thing with that is, it's the same with binge watching a TV series, for example. You don't binge watch, I don't know, Law and Order, and then binge watch like Law and Order LA, and then binge watch like Law and Order. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't go back to back to back, right? You don't binge watch all of the CSIs across all of those things, because ultimately, while they are all of a certain level of quality, and they might differ in certain ways, like you will get used to it, as it were. And I think that these one-page RPGs are a great way to kind of break that up and allow us to go and try a character that's completely different. So in the Blades in the Dark campaign, my character is quite sparse with his language and is very much about fighting his way through a problem, whereas in Sexy Battle Wizards, I was really chipper, really talkative, think my way out of the problem sort of a character. And it's great because you get to have that kind of an experience that isn't just that same character again, over and over and over again. In addition, there is a lot of enjoyment in the idea of running characters like you stole them, which is, I like to do this with Call of Cthulhu one-shots, for example, where it's like, it doesn't really matter what happens to your character at the end of this. So because of that, you're not super precious about that character. And because of that, it encourages you to think about the story and the mechanics in terms of role play and narrative, rather than, well, I need my character to level up in this way or to survive until the next episode, right? And I think that's great. I think that's really, really glorious. And it is also, I would say, these one pages, and I think Sexy Battle Wizards is a perfect example of this. This is closer to the improv side of RPGs, rather than the simulationist side of RPGs, which, I'm in all the different forms of RPG. I think that there's tons of really interesting stuff in all of them, but to go true improv is, improv where basically whether or not you succeed is determined on or the roll of a dice. That's a very lightweight RPG, but it's also quite a refreshing one because it allows you to just kind of muck around with your powers for a couple of hours, which I think is amazing.
Talking of conventions.
Oh yeah.
Talking of conventions.
Mm-hmm.
When this episode comes out, we'll be busy packing for.
I'm looking at my calendar now. We will be.
Aircon.
We will be.
So you can still, I believe, you can definitely still get tickets.
Oh yeah.
To Aircon if you'd like to come, and it is my favourite board game convention. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I mean, most of what I get anxious about is what games to bring, considering I've got a captive audience. And it's kind of like, right, what do I bring?
Yeah.
What I probably won't bring, though, is a couple of games I've been playing recently, and it's not because I don't think they're deserving of an afternoon out in aircon. It's more that they are, well, one of them is a 4-player but really solitaire game about exploring an ocean.
Okay.
An ocean. And the other one is a 2-player game about warring city factions. Which one do you want to know about first?
I want to know about the 2-player one because that's one that's not going to come to aircon because there's 3 of us.
Yeah. Well, are you bringing Lorcana?
I mean, I was thinking about it. Are you?
Yeah.
Are you going to bring some?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I might have some.
I think I'm going to build a deck and bring it.
I think I'm going to bring my Scrooge McDuck deck.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Okay. Well, okay. So, but other than Lorcana, yeah, District Noir will not be making the list, even though it's with a bit of a heavy heart because it's definitely vying for a place between me and Chris, and it's a shame he's not here, as one of our favourite 2-player games.
Interesting.
To play against each other.
Okay.
And for the longest time, that's been Compromat. Have you played Compromat before?
No, but I remember you talking about it on the podcast.
It's one of those. It's a Helvetic game. It's a really, really small box.
Yep. Cool.
The design of it is just gripping and superb, where you just have cards laid out in the middle of the table, and those cards are either worth victory points at the end of the game, or they give you a special ability, or they're an item that gives you a power. And all you do on your turn is you take a card off the top of your deck, you look at it, and you put it down by one of these items. And then it's up to you whether you take another card off the deck or not to add to that. But as soon as you lift the card up off the deck and look at it, you're committed to adding it to that pile. And then you're just playing pontoon at that point. You're just playing blackjack. You're just playing 21. Basically, the person who either hits 21 or gets the closest to 21 without going bust will claim that item at the end of the round. So it's one of those beautiful games where you'll be playing, you'll put down a 10 and then you'll put down another 10, and you just want to take a risk, and you'll lift up that card in front of you and it's an 8, and you've got to stay completely stony faced at all times, lest your partner across the table gets an inkling about the fact that you've just gone absolutely bust on this thing. So it's a wonderful game, and we've played it for a long time, and always makes it to the table when we're together. But District Noir has probably been the closest game that we've played recently that's come to sort of toppling that crown.
Huh.
And I think it's in part because it shares a little bit of that DNA that Compromat has. It shares that bluffing, that sort of ability, or that need to kind of keep your nerve and really stay straight-faced when your opponent is directly across from you. There's just something really thrilling about that, and Compromat works really well because it manages to condense that experience and makes that tension ratchet up quite quickly. And District Noir does the same thing. Quite interestingly, Compromat is a game that I've never won. Chris has won every single time we played, and this is because, quote, he used to play blackjack with his grandparents all the time. And I don't know what that makes of the man.
I don't know. I think it feels like I feel like his grandparents saw him coming, basically.
So how District Noir works is you have a deck of cards, and in that deck of cards you have, and the theme is, it's got this very a noir style theme. So the theming is around, you can imagine like 1950s, 60s New York style theming. And so you have cards in the deck that represent sort of positive points that you can score. You have cards in the deck that represent negative things that will happen to you, and they are negative points. So that, like, going to jail, for example, will impact your score negatively. And then there's other cards in the deck, 3 cards, for example, that are 3 specific locations in this city. And how the game works is you're all working from the same deck of cards. You each get a hand of 5. You take some cards out of the deck, so it's a bit more difficult to card count. And then you start off with some cards in this row in the middle that sits next to the deck. And then on your turn, you can do one or two things. You can either add a card to the row, or you can pick up the last 5 cards that have been placed in this row. And once you've picked up, you can't pick up anymore.
Right.
And it's just a really, really simple, streamlined set of rules. Just 2 rules. You either place down a card or you pick up the last 5 cards played.
Yeah.
That just creates this utter 2-player magic. Because what you're always trying to do is gamble between, this is a card I would really like and I'd like to pick it up, or this is a card I would really like my opponent to pick up.
Right.
And I get rid of.
Right.
So you're either making the pot in the middle of the table really juicy, so when it comes around to your turn, you can go, right, all those 5 cards, bang, 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 bang. Or you make it awful, so the other opponent is put off, and therefore you can get a card that you really want.
Yep.
Or you lace the trap, you like make it really juicy, but throw in a -5 card in there as well, so they can't help but want to pick it up and take that -5 score. And I think juicy is just that word. It's just like that delight when you've laid this perfect trap for your opponent to walk into. Like you've given them all the cards they want, because how the scoring works is who's got the majority of a certain number. So if you've got 2 cards that are worth 8 and your opponent has also got 2 cards that are worth 8, whoever's got the most will score that 8 points.
Right.
So you can really like make that central pot really enticing by putting down one of your 8 cards and being like, there you go, you can have that one. But if you want that one, you're going to have to pick up this -5. You're going to have to pick up this -2. You're going to have to take some of the hits to pick that card up.
So that dynamic is a little bit like No Thanks, for example. Like,
yes,
that kind of level.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the one other twist that the game does is that if at any point you have all 3 of those location cards that I mentioned at the start, you win automatically at that point. So whenever anyone plays a location card, it immediately ratchets up the tension in terms of, right, who's going to pick up all these cards?
Clever.
Who's going to be the first person to pick up? And me and Chris played several games back to back of this, which is unusual for Chris, who's usually like a one and done.
Yeah.
On to the next one. But it was just tense, interesting, beguiling, like a real feast in terms of just that dueling dueling combatants across the table, where on more than one occasion we were just like, well played.
Well played.
You know, well played. Like, we just sort of, it was that kind of like noirish kind of feeling where we've been battling for so long, we've got nothing but respect for each other, even though all we're doing is screwing each other over constantly.
That sounds great. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was really good.
Okay. So I like this game idea. It sounds very good. It's 2-player, so it's unlikely to come to Aircon, but
No.
I would be up for playing that in the future. So what's the one that might be coming to Aircon, or
I might bring it because it is up to 4 players, but really, it really is a solitaire experience.
Okay, so yeah, because you said multiplayer, but really solitaire. So like,
yeah,
okay, what is this game?
So this is Beacon Patrol.
Okay,
and just to say, both these games from Pandasaurus, sent to us ever so kindly. Thank you very much. And this is a Beacon Patrol, and this is one of those games where it's been designed and drawn by the same person, Torben Ratzlaff.
Okay.
And the first thing to say, it is gorgeous on the table. Like, it has such an amazing presence and design and aesthetic.
Yep.
On the table. If you go to our Instagram page, you will see some. I think I put a video on there about Beacon Patrol and how it looks. But the aim of the game is, it's a tile laying game, and you are picking up 3 tiles on your turn. If you are playing a 1-player game, the variance in how many tiles you're picking up alters depending on how many players you're playing as, or playing with, I should say. And then you're putting those tiles on the board, or you discard them. And the rules of placement is that each tile has a little arrow in the corner, so it can only go in one direction. So there's no like Carcassonne style wibbly wobbly, if I twist it this way or that way. You know, the tiles all go up in the same orientation. And the other rule is that when a tile is placed, your little boat that you've got must be able to then sail into the tile. So the whole game has this momentum behind it, which is actually probably what I find the most endearing, is that when you place a tile, you move your ship. When you place a tile, you move your ship. When you place a tile, you move your ship. So it simulates that fog of war kind of feeling when in a video game, you know, when you're just like gently pushing the boundaries of what you know and discovering things as you come across them, rather than laying the tiles and then moving your ship on a different subsequent turn. And the ocean is like this verdant blue. The buoys and the lighthouses that dot around the seascape are this wonderful red and white, and then the islands are themselves that you will nudge up against the coasts of are this really, you know, even though they're black and white, they are really evocative and they really stand out across like the contrast of the blue and the reds.
They're very
of the landmarks.
The visuals of it, and I'm looking at it now on a Instagram, like they're very. The way I would describe them is like, it's like if IKEA made a map. like the
yeah, I can see that.
You know the IKEA characters, and they're quite like evocative and simply drawn, but they are very expressive. Like, you know, I'm always very excited when I see the IKEA person who gets really sad that he's by himself trying to make a cupboard. Like the map looks really, what's the right phrase? It's like they get a lot out of a limited palette, right?
Yes.
And it looks really good. Like the way that you're describing it and the way that it looks, it feels like Carcassonne meets the Fog of War of Civ.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's got this like Nordic design to it, really. It feels very much of the Swedish, Icelandic-ish style. And it has been my go-to solitaire game for quite a while now. And how it scores and how it plays is actually quite simple. So you basically score a point if a tile is completely explored. And by explored, how the game defines that is it has a tile basically on all its compass points. It has a tile to the north, to the south, to the east, or the west. That tile is explored. In the middle, you get 1 point. If there's a buoy on there or a lighthouse on there, you'll get more points. And that's it. So there's no real need to complete an island, like getting an island shape complete and finding all of its edges. There's no real need to do that. It's all about exploring certain locations and icons in the ocean. So I just love that fact of the game is that it's about exploring rather than completing. And even though like I love games like Cascadia and Carcassonne, they're all tile laying games about starting something and then finishing it off. And it's about finishing off that area or getting to that particular or reaching that threshold to score that amount of certain points. Like there's a certain like escalation of discovery. Whereas with Beacon Patrol, it's just about discovery and it's just about exploration. It's just about movement and that momentum within this world. And the box itself is quite generous. There's 2 expansions that come with it. There's windmills and there's piers. And both of them add something a little bit different to the game. But I think what I was getting at in terms of it being a very solitaire experience is the same way I feel about Gentle Rain, in that I just can't imagine sharing this with someone else.
Yeah.
If you do with Beacon Patrol, everyone gets their own ship and basically can explore another area of the map. So there is sometimes something quite nice about someone explores something in the south and you're off to the north, and you can go and help them with maybe complete a part of their little puzzle, and they could come and help you with yours, and that's quite nice and that's quite sweet. But I think when it comes to exploration, there is just something about that loneliness, that isolation, that, you know, looking down at the map and knowing that you've done it all yourself, which is the most satisfying part of
it. Obviously, you and I, Steam Deck owners.
Oh yeah,
and
gotta love it,
and proud. Yeah, like I've been really enjoying my Steam Deck so far, playing all sorts of games, and some of them I'm sure I'll talk about in the future. But like, I just finished Superliminal, which is unbelievably good, very, very clever. 3 hours, never outstays its welcome. A game that truly knows when to go. Yep, there you go. That's the game. Off you. Cheers. Glad you had a good time. You'll also remember that I was talking a little while back. I wouldn't even say talking, effusing greatly about a game called Chasing Static, which is...
Oh yeah, I think I put this on my wish list. Was that the one where... Was that the one that was it British? Was it set in Britain?
It's set in rural Wales. It is a
Wales, that was it,
PS1, demake-esque horror, wobbly textures and all, and first-person adventure, and disturbing and interesting in all the right ways. And it's made by somebody here in Bristol who goes by the name of Headware Games. So I've not actually met this person. I just know that they are in the game scene here in Bristol. And their newest release, which I mentioned at the time when I played Chasing Static, is a game called Hollowbody, which is the next level up. So Headware Games is previous releases are Guard Duty, which is like a 2D side-scrolling point-and-click adventure. So you might think something like 16-bit, that sort of era of the PC maybe, that sort of era. Then his next game is Chasing Static, which is PS1, and then this game coming up now is a game called Hollowbody, which attempts to be much closer to the PlayStation 2. I will say it is much more high fidelity than the PlayStation 2 could ever hope to achieve, because technology is what it is. But it brings that aesthetic from a few specific horror games, chiefly Resident Evil 1 or 2, and importantly for me, Silent Hill 2, specifically Silent Hill 2, 2, 3, 4. And it takes many of those mechanics. So it has tank controls, for example. So if you're old enough to remember this, wandering around in third person with different camera angles and so forth, you had to control your character as if they were a tank of some kind. You would press forward, you would move forward, you would press left, you wouldn't immediately walk left, you would turn your character a number of degrees left, right? So it's got all of that stuff going for it, which I love. And the other thing is that it combines all of this with Blade Runner. And then it sets it in a sort of dour England, right? So obviously we'll have links to in the show notes. If you're interested in what it looks like, we'll have links and stuff like that to Hollowbody. So I've been playing the demo of this because this was a demo that was available in Next Fest, and you can tell what it's trying to emulate. It's not referred to as a demo, it's referred to as the playable teaser, which, if you remember from the PS4 era, PT was what was the playable teaser for Silent Hills, which unfortunately never came out. So you can immediately see where this is coming from. This is a world of hover cars and not quite cyberpunk, I don't think. Not really. Maybe some of the darker elements of cyberpunk, but it's less interested in that. It is much more close to things like Blade Runner. Sure. Dystopian, far future, things are everything's dark, that kind of thing. And the demo doesn't particularly go into much information about what's going on, but basically you are in an abandoned English city and suburbs. So you will go into council houses, right? And it is wild in a video game to see an English council house. Genuinely really fascinating, right? And the streets that you walk down look like your standard suburb with a motorway running through it, right? With an A road running through it.
That's cool.
And that pitch of Silent Hill 2, Resident Evil meets Blade Runner in England is it whatever you're picturing. It is that. It is exactly that. It manages to deliver that in spades. And what this demo does is it kind of shows you bits and pieces of everything that you'll do in the game. So there's a bit of combat, and the combat is what you would hope for in a game inspired by Silent Hill and Resident Evil, which is that yes, there are guns and you can arm yourself, but ammo is in very short supply, and enemies take a long amount of time to put down, and you are better off just not engaging with them, running past them or what have you. You're also better off conserving your ammo as much as you possibly can, so you end up relying a lot on hand-to-hand combat weapons, and it gets really tense because there are, a few enemies in the game. There are a few enemies in the demo, and they will take a bite out of you. Like they are no joke. So, you want to put a few bullets into these things, but you realize you're going to be running out of ammo. So you switch over to, a bat, and it isn't guaranteed that you're going to walk away from it unscathed, right? And at that point, you drop to like a low health, and it does that classic, red and a red filter over the screen and all that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of combat side of things, and it's deliberately awkward, right? I know that sounds really odd, but if you've played one of those games before, you'll appreciate it for what it actually is meant to be, in that you're not meant to feel powerful. You're not meant to, this is way before Resident Evil 4 came along and said, actually, you're pretty capable, right? Like, no, this is, you are up against it, and you should try and avoid combat. It's a short demo. It will take you about an hour. If you're as stupid as I am, it'll take you about an hour because the puzzle's quite challenging to figure out. It's a short thing. This is probably one of my most anticipated games of this year.
Wow!
And it's a Blade Runner in England meets Silent Hill 2 and Resident Evil.
That's kind of what I was going to ask. Is like, who is this? I feel like we've had a big glut of games that have been quite evocative of that period. While we're all waiting for Silent Hill to get remade, or Silent Hill 2, or whatever nonsense that's going to be. Yeah. I feel like in that absence, in that vacuum, there's just been a bit of a resurgence in that tank-controlled, very dark style horror game. So do you just think that this would just appeal to people who are nostalgic for that in particular? Not to say that there's nothing wrong with appealing to that nostalgia, because I'm sure it's a huge market, and that's the wonderful thing about video games, is the people who were brought up on them as kids are now making the game. So they're going to want to play. They're going to want to make something that's evocative of when they were playing games. But do you think this would just appeal to people who have the fond memories of Dino Crisis and Silent Hill and Resi?
I mean, I think it definitely is pitched squarely at those people. I don't think that's like a controversial thing to say. But I think and I think that I think that you hit the nail on the head there, where yes, a lot of people are waiting for Silent Hill 2's remake, myself included. But many of us are waiting for it in the way that we might wait for a train crash to occur. Like everything I've seen about the remake of Silent Hill 2 makes me think that is a team that doesn't really understand what Silent Hill 2 is, or at least their marketing team doesn't understand what Silent Hill 2 actually is. So whenever I think about Silent Hill 2's remake, I just sigh inwardly and sometimes outwardly. And to the people who that happens to, it's definitely going to appeal. Hollowbody is definitely going to appeal to them, because this is a game that goes, yeah, that's all very well and good, that modern stuff, but no, what we want is psychological, disturbing horror that isn't necessary. And there's gore in it without a doubt, but it's not about gratuitous gore. It's about using gore to add spice to an underlying mood of darkness that is actually the appealing part of these games. You played anything?
Me?
Game related?
Me? Yeah. I've been totally ignoring my Steam Deck.
Excellent.
But I have been playing on my Switch. So I completed Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Isn't it?
Wonder!
Isn't it wonderful?
It is. I have to admit, though, I did find it quite difficult.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a hard game.
It's a lot more difficult than I thought.
Yeah, it's a proper challenge.
It was going to be.
It's a proper challenge. Yeah, it's great.
But no, it is fantastic, and it's kind of one of those games where, in the same way that Rayman Origins did, is that I kind of was kind of thinking, what would it take to actually get everything?
Yeah. And yeah, I did consider
but I've been looking on Reddit, and I don't think it's as easy as it feels like it is.
I looked into it, and I saw one Redditor describe it as Super Mario Wonder is one of the greatest games of all time until you want to try and complete it 100%, in which case you'll hate it. Which sounds like my kind of challenge, but I've had my fun with it, and I found one of the hidden levels and was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I found those levels as well, and I was like, oh dear.
I don't think I'm up to this. Yeah.
But the other game I've been playing alongside that is the new Prince of Persia one.
Right.
Prince of Persia.
Yes.
And the Lost Crown.
Right, okay, so this one has thrown me through a loop because I'm usually pretty good at sniffing out rubbish.
Yeah.
And I usually look at a trailer and make my mind up pretty quickly as to whether or not I'm going to like something. And I saw this and thought, wow, this sure is a filler between whatever it is that they're doing with the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake, and
we just need to keep this copyright license.
Exactly. We need to, this feels like an opportunity to engage an audience rather than like a reason to make a game, right? But I keep hearing really good things about it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Huh.
I'm not a massive. Now I'm going to rail against. I feel like there's a big movement going on in certain areas of the internet. They're railing against Metroidvania as a genre signifier.
Sure.
Because apparently in Japan, Metroidvanias are called search action games.
Oh, cool.
And I think most of the community is now picking up on that and feeling like that's a better description of how these games actually play.
I think, that's quite clever. Yeah, I like that.
So, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a search action game, and what I mean by that is that you have this amazingly detailed and labyrinthine map that you explore, and that theoretically you have access to at all times, but certain areas will be locked off to you because you don't have a specific power or access to a specific power as of yet. So, for example, the classic one is the double jump.
Mm-hmm.
So you start off only being able to jump once. There's a platform that's just out of your reach, and then later on in the level or in the game, you'll unlock the double jump, so you'll have to come all the way back. You can now double jump up to that platform and explore a new area of the map. As a player, I find that kind of game design both infuriating but rewarding in equal measures, because I'm the kind of player, a bit like Super Mario Wonder, where you go through a level in Super Mario Wonder and you get really annoyed whether either because you don't get all 3 purple coins or you don't hit the top of the flag.
That top of the flag is particularly onerous, isn't it?
Yeah. So search action games or Metroidvania games are pretty much the distillation of that as a feeling, in terms of either not knowing whether you're doing the right thing, whether you've got the right powers but not executing it the right way, or it's just not intended to be your moment in that place at that time, and having to live with the fact that you're either going to have to come back to this area at another point in the game or leave it unexplored altogether, which I find infuriating. But when you eventually come back to it and you succeed where you once failed, it's really exhilarating. It's why those games are really popular, because you have this feeling of progression. You have this is a very tactile and tacit feeling of your character growing and developing and being able to do more stuff. And that, the design in Prince of Persia and that level of exploration it's incredible. It's so good. Like, the platforming is really tight, really interesting. It's got a mechanic which I've not seen in a game of this type before, where so usually you can open up the map and put down little markers that might and they'll have like a symbol on them, like a question mark or like a jaws, the jaws of a beast, to represent, oh, here's a really tough enemy that I can't get past yet. I'll just put a marker down to remember that's there, and I'll put a little question mark down there to like come back to that later. But what Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown does is it allows you to take a screenshot at their location. So you stand at a location, you press a button on the Switch, and it'll take a screenshot, so that when you come back to the map and you hover over that icon, it'll give you a screenshot of what that area actually looks like, rather than just a little token of something.
That's really nice. That gets me reminiscing about things like Nintendo Power and Games Master and things where you'd see those maps that they'd lay out of every bit of the game.
Yes.
Oh, that's really clever.
It's a limited power. You can only do it 12 or so times until you use up some of the photos that you've got stored, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not like a finite level. You just can only have 12 running concurrently at the same time. But, you know, I've been playing it for like 6 or 7 hours, and I've probably only put down about 4 or 5 snapshots.
That's cool.
So I feel like the amount that I've got is reasonable for the level of challenge. The game has certain Souls-like elements, which every game has to have now contractually, apparently, where you will come across these trees in the world, and you bring life to the trees, and they act a little bit like bonfires. So they act as respawn points, but they also will bring back all the enemies that were once perished in the level. But you don't lose things that you collected when you die.
Okay.
So that's a small mercy. But they don't act as fast travel points. Fast travel is a completely separate thing done by a completely different element in the game. So even at this moment in time, like, I feel like backtracking is a bit of a chore.
It feels like a kind of return to Prince of Persia's original roots. Like, I don't know if you played those first 2 games, but they did feel like, you know, there's a reason that when the original Tomb Raider came out, there's a reason people compared it to Prince of Persia, because like, it was like, okay, take 3 steps back, start running, hold run, like, and then jump and then grab, right? Like, you know, Tomb Raider and Tomb Raider, you know, took a whole bunch of that, for example. The combat in the original Prince of Persia was very, you know, was very Souls-like in that you needed to know what you were doing, because you were going to die in like 1 or 2 hits, right?
Yeah.
And you did have to explore. There were hidden traps. There were things that you would notice about the world, that when you landed on a ledge particularly heavily, another ledge that would fall down into a death pit if you walked over it, would like rattle subtly, and like you'd have to figure out, oh, okay, I have to move through the space in this way. So it sounds like a bit of a return to form to some of that stuff, but without the trappings of it being that kind of age, the sort of nonsense that we would just not put up with these days.
No.
So like, to me, the game looked like and I'm an idiot, so I've played them, but like it looked to me like the Assassin's Creed Chronicles games, where it was like, this is just a 2D one to keep you tided over, because sorry, but Origins isn't coming out for a while. But But it sounds to me like this is actually like, oh no, this is viable. This could be another.
This is a 20 to 30 hour
Jeez.
search action game. This is like a proper thing. This is a proper game for proper gamers. But I not all of it hits for me. I think for me, I really love the platforming and I really love the exploration. I'm not such a massive fan of the combat. Sure. I think it's gone too soulsy for me. The combat gets more in the way of like the rhythm of the platforming.
Yep. Okay.
Than really enhances the story or the action in some way. But then I'm sure there are people who really enjoy the combat and the depth of it who don't enjoy the jumping through 10, 15 spikes.
Yeah.
And doing it all perfectly. You know, I think it's horses for courses. And unfortunately, there's enough accessibility options to judge for that. So I've turned like the parrying to be like have a better window for me to do more damage, you know, as my character. So the combat is slightly easier, but not too much easier. But the platforming and the exploration is at level. And there's things like there's a guided mode where it will specifically guide you to where you need to be next, rather than just like saying go and do whatever, which is not a complete like setting a waypoint, but at least tells you in what direction you might need to be headed. So again, there's a lot of those accessibility features that are completely optional. You can turn them all off if you want to. It's not an easy mode. It's just a way of how I find it is those parts of the games where I just don't have the time or the inclination to really engage with or learn this complicated and quite in-depth combat system. I just kind of want it to just run around and be a badass with a couple of swords.
I when I went back and played Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is the Vania part of Metroidvania, there were moments where I was like, I've completed this before. Why do I still not know where I need to go? Right? And I think we're getting to the point now, especially, I mean, certainly, you know, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but like, I go to GameFAQs more than I ever used to because I'm just like, I have tried to figure this out. I have a job. Like, I'm not going to spend 2 hours running around this thing only to get frustrated and then be like, oh, it was this, right? Like, so I feel like all of those accessibility features are really useful for people like us, because ultimately, I don't mind swanning around in a space for 10 or 15 minutes not knowing what I'm meant to do. But if I can't figure it out for myself, I'm either going to go and fuck it, or I'm going to go and fuck it. Yeah. I'm going to put it down, basically. Yeah. Dan's editing this, so I'll do that.
Yeah, I'm sure he was on that. It was too good. It was too good a pun.
Yeah, so fuck it or f*** it, basically. Which I think is I think that's I think that is the you reach a certain age where you think that, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did that multiple times with bloody Super Mario Wonder.
Yeah, like, what do you want me to do, Mario? Oh, okay. I have to push the pipe. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Oh, that was infuriating.
Yeah, I was.
There's only certain blocks that certain characters can see. Oh, so you want me to go through the whole game with every single character to find? Yeah. No,
fuck it,
please.
Or fuck it.
But Prince of Persia, I mean, spoilers, you don't even play as a Prince of Persia.
What? Do you play as Zelda instead?
Oh, Christ. Like, the worst thing about the game is the story. Like, it is completely... Yeah. It's not even bobbins. It's not even anything. It's just nothing, which is unfortunate because it's kind of, you know, when I'm getting into 10 to 15 hours of playing this, really it's going to be, the story is going to be the clincher at the end. But it's just absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the most... You can tell that in terms of resources and efforts as handed out to them from Ubisoft, like, they chose, right, let's make exploration, let's make combat, let's, really make this an interesting world visually and have interesting elements in it, but no idea really about how to bring it to life or apply some sort of narrative to it.
Well, I know it's just been
I've got nothing left in my grab bag.
I've got something left in my grab bag. We asked last episode for listeners to get in touch with us, stayinginpod@gmail.com.
Yes, please.
We said, hello, everyone. We said, we're always on the lookout for fun new things. And because, we find fun stuff that we think that you'll like. And you probably find stuff that we'll probably like. So we'd love to hear from you. And Chris from Manitoba in Canada, wow. I mean, talk about exoticism. Chris says, Chris did exactly what we suggested and got in touch with us and said, I just wanted to +1 for Severance, which is a thing that we discussed very recently. I think it's a show that makes for great conversation, which sounds good. Also, have you guys watched The Queen's Gambit? I was on the fence about watching it, but when I did, holy cow, I absolutely loved it. I'd recommend it to anyone. Love the show. Have a good one. I haven't seen The Queen's Gambit. I keep hearing lovely things about it. The only thing I know it for, really, is it's about chess. And it came out at roughly the same time as that Sherlock thing came out, around the same time. And
roughly.
Some absolute chancers released a board game based on it, which I thought was amazing, and I salute them for the gumption, basically, of them doing that. But I haven't watched it. Have you?
We watched, I think, a couple of episodes of it, and for whatever reason, we probably just got distracted and moved on to something else. I think the thing that didn't chime with me was there was kind of like there was hallucinatory moments involving chess that I think it was kind of, I don't know, sometimes I just get into my head when I'm watching something that I can just see into the writer's room and them just thinking of ways of, but how do we make this visually interesting?
yeah, sure. Like when the writers in the writer's room for DS9 are like, we have got to go somewhere other than this port. Right, holodeck, straight there. Let's go.
But I'm always up for giving things a second shake, especially because we've started watching Severance now, and I think, Pete, in terms of conversational TV, I think Severance is a kind of show where you would, during its entire runtime, you would be sitting on the edge of your sofa, making your hands in a pyramid and pressing them up against your chin, just going,
Oh, that sounds like a show I would like.
Because it raises, every single minute that passes that show raises so many philosophical quandaries. It is unbelievable. So I think that you would just absolutely love to revel in what that presents in terms of, well, let's apply a philosophical theory to a TV series and kind of explore what would happen in that way.
If Chris from Canada is suggesting it and you're suggesting it, maybe I'll give it a go.
Yeah, but if Dan is, then... Yeah.
But if Dan is, then... Yeah, stayinginpod@gmail.com, folks. More recommendations like that, please. I am on the lookout for... What am I on the lookout for at the moment? I am interested in extreme sports games.
Okay.
And I would be very interested in hearing if anybody's been playing one recently that I've missed out on. So anything with the skateboard or rollerblades or BMX or snowboards or skiing or surfing or any of those sorts of things, even racing, and especially even racing games and stuff like that. Anything along those lines, I'm particularly interested in hearing about those. So get in touch via that. We're also on social media. The one that you really should care about is Instagram, because it's just nice pictures. But we're on some other ones as well that we don't really use all that much. And we'd really appreciate it if you'd tell your pals about this. And even though it doesn't do anything to the great algorithm, if you really like this episode or any of the previous episodes, do please give us a review and a rating, because while it doesn't help us do anything with it, it sure makes us feel nice in our tummies.
Yes.
Yeah. And is that everything?
I think that's... BGG,
of course.
Steam. If you're looking for a shortcut to get to Hollowbody, or links to District, if you links to District Noir or Beacon Patrol, or actually Prince of Persia won't be on that because it's a Ubisoft launcher. It's not on Steam yet, of course. But if you want some shortcuts to some of the stuff that we've been talking about, then we've got a curated page on Steam and as well on BGG, where if it's available on there and we've talked about it, it will be on there. So it's a great sort of a brilliant pool of a resource of stuff that we've talked about, not just in this episode, but over the years as well. So check that out. There's some stuff on Spotify that Chris has been bumbling around with.
It's linked. Again, it's in the show notes. It's linked at the bottom of the show notes. It's lovely soundtracks scored to things that we discuss, and Chris keeps it updated, which is amazing.
Yeah. And then just one sort of brief note. Thanks again for Pandasaurus for sending us District Noir and Beacon Patrol, and just a sort of message ahead. We will be at Aircon, me, Pete, and Chris, from the 15th to the 17th of March.
If you want a sticker.
So if you want a sticker, then stick around and find one of us, and we will give
Come and say hello.
A sticker. Even if you don't want to say hello, because we've had it in the past where people have been like, "Oh, I was too scared to say hello," and we're like,
Chris does that to people. We get it.
But honestly, we'll be one of us will be adorned in a staying in shirt, so you won't be able to miss us, but we'll be around for the weekend. And if you're there, just send us a DM on Instagram and we'll make a point of saying hello. But it'd be great to see you if you're able to go.
You will get a high five from me if you enjoy high fives.
Right.
Well,
see you on the beach.
Yeah, I'll see you on the beach.